To get a few tables that would like to volunteer to share out. So if you guys elected to have somebody share out for your table and would like to share out, can you raise your hand? I know. I'm an introvert too, I know. Okay, well I'm just gonna, I'll go over here.
My team just said make it up, which is really good. We kind of went off a little topic actually, but we started to talk about social media content in particular and digital media content. A little closer, how is it now? And the real things we're seeing in our team is when, I used to come from cars, I come from fashion now, and we've spent $500,000 shooting one image, and we've resurrected David Bowie and David Maisel, and Spielberg's on hold, and then the social media team are on the roof with an iPhone shooting the same product. And so we just sort of went off on a bit of a tangent, but thought that might be a good topic for teams like this to think about later. What is that, as we talk about content and the need for content and the machine of content, how does that work in a highly valued content environment? So yeah, we were a bit off topic, but that was one of our talking points.
I was sitting. Okay, I'm going to pick you guys. I thought you had a good topic. Who wants to volunteer? Anyone? Okay, great.
Thank you. We talked about balancing your approach to your role. We all have the similar roles, but in very different companies. And we work with a very different process. So we talked about balancing our budget. So that's a huge one. It's, whether you're in-house agency, or not. Balancing your budget is something that can be time-consuming and very delicate. We also talked about expectations, balancing everyone else's expectations of what you're going to deliver, how you're going to deliver it, and when you're going to deliver it. And also subjective feedback. How do you balance people's subjective feedback? Because it can be varied, and it can come from people that actually are meant to give it and people that aren't. So how do you balance that? And then also educating people in your company to why your group exists, what they do, and why they should give you more people on your team to do their job. So it's kind of a lobbying approach. And that was, does anyone want to say anything else from our team? Okay, thank you.
One of the topics, I sat here for a bit, and I actually thought a topic that was brought up that is really important was actually accountability. So I don't know if you want to say a little bit about that. Yeah.
What a part.
Well, one of the things he brought up that I think is really, really important is that a lot of what I talked about only works if there's accountability in the workplace. So if you have folks that maybe aren't being held accountable, then what I'm talking about really doesn't work because you're not meeting the baseline goals, essentially, of the company. So I wondered if
we work with a few different creative teams at Sony or PlayStation, and we have one creative team that's very on top of things. Their boss is very involved. They hire well. They understand what timelines work, and they understand what their workload means. We have another group that we work with who actually works on most of the production nowadays. That their boss is not very involved, doesn't really understand it. And as a result, their entire team is kind of in chaos. And a lot of times that's more work for us as project managers and account people, because we're having to babysit that whole process and understand what their needs are, and we kind of get that diva attitude. So it's very telling to what she was talking about earlier as accountability, because those people who are where your team and your leader is kind of in the right place, it's so much more efficient, and it works for your organization better, because you're not having to waste time on things, on little details and drama and all those things. You're able to push out work pretty efficiently, as opposed to one that doesn't have it together. And this is all within the same organization, which is a little sad. Yes, but you see the stark difference between those two, and you can kind of see, you kind of hope that one would be like the other. And I think for us, the challenge is because we are such a large organization, we can't be nimble enough to kind of cut the things that out so easily when we clearly see it. So that takes a lot of upper management brass to say, we need to do things better on this end, and whatever bureaucracy is in place to get that done. Whereas at a smaller organization like an agency or whatever, you can kind of see those things and make that shift pretty quickly. So that's the challenge that we deal with.
Thank you. Carrie, I wanted to let you walk around with this.
Sorry. Okay, I was sitting with you guys for a little bit, and I thought that you guys were having a good topic on managing your roles. So I don't know if you picked anyone that would like to speak. Yeah.
We were talking about managing roles, and I think part of what Ann and I were talking about was defining at the onset of a project who are the stakeholders, and then if they feel like they have a seat at the table, they get to have a voice and they get to weigh in, that their opportunity at the beginning of a production and not the tail end, then they can stick to what their actual role is, what they get to weigh in on, and know that they are then supported and heard, and then they don't derail everything or do things that are reactionary after the fact that end up costing time and money and, I don't know, being a general pain in the ass. So that was something we kind of talked about a bit.
Anyone else who had any insights from their group they wanted to share? Go.
I'm taking one for the team this time. Next time it's one of you, okay? So at our table, we actually have 6 different roles that people have within their kind of marketing organizations, which made it hard to have the conversation about role. But one of the interesting things that we kind of ended up talking about was, do creatives actually like process or not? And what do we think? Do creative like process? Wow. So at our table, I think overwhelmingly, we actually have 2 creative folks sitting with us. It's that creatives do like process, and I'm not creative. Maybe the rest of them are creative. But we have a graphic designer and a copywriter here with us. And so it was just interesting to hear how all of our roles supported process, which ultimately the creatives are wanting because they do see that it will help them. So that was majority of what we talked about.